Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have someone that I have known for, longer than I care to admit, I think. It's a long time. And his name is Barry Moltz, and he is a starship commander and a small business expert. His latest book is Change Masters: How to Actually Make the Changes You Already Know You Need to Make. Yeah, which is a great freaking title, and that's a book worth reading. And he's also working now on a new book called The Family Business Book: How to Get Rich and Get Along. So Barry, thanks for joining me. I think it's been, I can't believe I haven't had you on earlier, but I'm just really glad you're here. Welcome.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
So, it's speaklikealeader.show, and I'm just going to bust right in by asking you, what's one of the things, if I said, communication and the power and the importance of communication, like where does that take your mind in your experience as a small business expert and starship commander?
Well, communication in any kind of relationship is everything. I mean, you just have to look at your own, if you're married or you have close friends or you have a significant other, if you can communicate, it goes a long way into helping that relationship. And I remember when my first job out of school was to go work with IBM. And at the time, this is the mid 80s, when you got to be a manager at IBM, they actually sent you to charm school. And charm school was 1 month in White Plains, New York, and they taught you how to be a manager. And that was a luxury that none of us these days actually have. And a big part of being a manager and a leader was clearly communicating to the people who worked for you and the people that you worked for. Because if you can get that part done well, John, the rest of it is much easier.
Yeah. Well, so now the secret is out about how come you're so charming. You actually went to charm school.
Exactly. To charm school. Exactly.
What do you remember about that experience?
For a month.
That's really, really cool. What are some things that stand out about that experience for you? Maybe in the realm of communication, but also just generally.
One thing that stands out for me is that we actually did a lot of role plays, and they would videotape us doing the role plays. So you can see yourself, how you have an idea of how you communicated. Then you watch yourself on video and you say, well, this is how I actually communicated. And it really helps. And I know for so many different things, John, in your business, a lot of people don't want to watch videotape of them talking because it bothers them, but you can learn a lot.
Yeah. When I tell people when they're going to watch videotape, I say, look, it's really, really helpful. And here's the one thing that I want you to promise me. Watch it like you're watching a good friend of yours, not like you're watching yourself. Because if people watch it like it's themselves, then I think they end up being so overly self-critical that it doesn't really help much. But if you can get past that self-criticalness, and I think one good way to do that is watch it like it's a good friend of yours, then it is absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing the things that you can learn by just watching yourself. I remember when I first started doing this, I would record everything I did and I would watch it. And, one of the things that I thought was pretty funny is that I was doing a pretty big presentation in a pretty big room. And I thought that I was making these gigantic, expansive gestures the whole time, because it was such a big room. And so I thought, I need to make big expand. I thought I was doing that. And when I watched the video, I look like a little Tyrannosaurus Rex with my little mini arms doing these teeny little gestures. And it was just a real wake up call to me that how I thought I was doing things was not always how they were showing up out there.
I remember when I did speaker training with my speaker coach in New York, Victoria LeBaum, I used to do a lot of this when I was speaking and a lot of this, and
Uh-huh.
I would just touch my face all the time. So she put
Uh-huh.
together a reel of me at all these different speeches touching my face, right? And that broke me of the habit of touching my face while I spoke,
That's
right?
pretty
Because there was no
funny.
reason I was touching my face. It was just nerves.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah. So that's
self-soothing,
how that worked
we
out.
all, yeah, that's funny. That's that would be a great thing to get a hold of now. Do you still have that anywhere?
It would be. That's the blooper reel. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's the blooper reel.
Yeah. That's really funny. Well, so Barry, tell us about, I got to imagine that when people want to actually make changes, they've got to communicate those changes, but they've got to know what those changes are. Like, give us some insights from change masters.
Yeah. Well, the reason I wrote that book is because over the years, since my wife won't let me start any more businesses, I've done a lot of business consulting for small business owners, and they
Mm,
bring me in and they pay me money and they say, "Listen, I've got to make a change. Here's the problem." We lay out a detailed plan about how to make the change, and then almost nothing happens. So I
yeah.
kept thinking to myself, why do people spend all this money? They have an intent to make a change, but the changes never happen. So we did a lot of research around this, and what we realized was that your brain is a pattern making machine, and it's programmed, if you're surviving and you're doing okay, not to make any changes because it really doesn't want to do anything differently. And that you have
Right.
to be in incredible pain in order to make any kind of change. And a lot of times also people try to make too big a change, that the chasm
Mm,
is too big a leap to go from one side to the other. So in the book, we take them through a 20-step process on how to make a small change, one small iterative step at a time, so they can make some kind of progress. Because change is hard. It really is.
yeah.
And biologically, your brain doesn't want you to change. So you're really fighting against that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's that thing of survival, right? Like, well, we're surviving right now. So like, let's not change anything because it might decrease our chance to survive, but that keeps you from
Right,
thriving, right?
right. Right. I also found out that when people spend money to make a change, even when they don't actually make the change, they think they've made the change because they spent money in an attempt to do it. So I was really shocked when I used to sell a lot of online courses. I was so surprised the number of people that bought the courses that never ever even started the course, even though
Oh,
they
you're
paid for
killing
it,
me.
and they never asked their money back.
Yeah.
I was just shocked by that because people figured,
Yeah.
oh, I paid to buy this course. I don't have to take it. I already paid for it. It's
Right.
just,
Right.
but that's what goes on in people's minds.
It's like me and all the books that I still have to read, right? And they're
And
all
John, I don't
sitting
mean they
there.
didn't complete John, right. But I don't mean that they didn't even, that they started the course and then finish it. I
Yeah.
mean, they didn't even open up, they didn't even
Yeah.
start it.
No.
Right. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy. I mean, and listen, I do it myself. I admit, like I
So
think
do
I have
I.
two
So
courses
do I.
right now. I really want to do them. I just have to schedule it, but they're sitting there undone. And I'm not going to ask for my money back because I intend to do them, and I got a whole bunch of books that I bought that I intend to read that I haven't even cracked open yet. Why did I buy another book when I didn't finish this one yet? Right. Well, that's one of the things I
Right.
think
And
that
what's the
is.
difference between intending to make a change? Go ahead, John.
Sorry, I think we got a little bit of a lag. I'm sorry. I don't know exactly why that's happening, but um, yeah. So no, you go ahead, Barry, and then I'll say what I was going to say.
No, I was saying, I think that we have to understand there's a difference between an intention to make a change and actually to make a change. A lot of people have the intention, right? I'm going to lose weight, right? I'm going to do marketing in my business. I'm going to, fire this person. I'm going to go after new customers. And then that there's a chasm between that and actually making the change. So what I pose to people is start by making the smallest start of that change, right? So for example, let's say I want to go after new customers, right? The smallest thing to start doing that is think about, okay, before I even call anybody, what's the profile of the person that would really be a good prospect for me, the pain that I solve for them. So just do
Yeah.
that step first. And then the second step is actually making that list. And maybe the third or fourth step is actually contacting them. But if you can
Yeah.
start on the first step and not try to have to go all the way to the fourth step right away, it helps people start down that path and create a little momentum and a little confidence that they actually can make that change.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I mean, it's the difference between 0 and 1 kind of, the intention is still pretty much 0, but the minute you take that first step, you've actually gone from nothing to something. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of
I remember when I first started to go, we have a little bit of a lag here, so.
yeah, you go
I
ahead, Barry.
remember when I first started to learn Zen meditation. Yeah, I remember when I first started to learn Zen meditation at this Zen Buddhist center, and they had introduction to meditation, right? And so they teach you how to meditate for 1 minute. And of course, being an American, I wanted to go on to intermediate meditation or advanced meditation, right? But there was only introduction meditation. And so I said to the Zen master, I said, listen, I've been meditating for like a year for 1 minute. I'd like to become more advanced. He goes, okay, try the next year, try that 1 minute, 5 seconds and see how you do. So I think a very un-American thing is this incremental progress. But I believe if you can take incremental progress, you can get there. I am a huge long distance cyclist. Like I cycle across states. I might cycle 150, 180 miles in one day. And when I train for that, I start, at 20 miles and I build up to 120, 150 miles. I just don't say, all right, I'm going to do 180 miles. You got to do
Right.
something incremental.
Well, I think that there's a lot of studies that show now that like making those small incremental changes is actually much more doable, much more successful, much more the way to do it.
Agreed.
So, when it comes to family businesses, let's talk about your next book, How to Get Rich and Get Along. What are some of the what are some of the keys there? Because I got to imagine, probably, I mean, my experience is that most small businesses are a lot like family businesses. I guess family businesses just have an even bigger wrinkle in that it's family.
Yeah, and listen, family businesses in my mind, John, are a lot more difficult. I try to work with my wife for 1 day. It didn't work out, right? So we kind of knew that. But where this book came is over the years, I've consulted with a lot of family businesses, and I've got a lot of horror stories. I got some success stories. And where this all revolves around is that the reason it's difficult is because they have a lifetime of baggage that comes into the business, right? The
Yeah.
relationships that they've had in the past influence how they act with each other in the business. And it is personal. So if the mother controlled the money in the family, she controls the money in the business. If there was a bully brother, the same brother's a bully. If there was a peacekeeper sister, she's still the peacekeeper. And so those relationships come over and they never sit down and say a couple things. One is, who is actually responsible for what in the business? We all can't make decisions together. It doesn't work. That's why in any small business, there's only one CEO. I don't think co-CEOs really work, especially if there's four CEOs. That doesn't work.
Right.
They also have to decide, how do decisions actually get made? And who's responsible for decisions? Is the group going to make big decisions, and then given on the individual areas, they're going to make their own decisions? And if they don't agree, who's the one person that's going to be the tiebreaker, that's going to make the final decision? They don't really figure out these three things, and it just becomes a free-for-all, not only for them, but for all the employees in the company.
Yeah. I took a course years ago, and one of the really interesting concepts in that course was it was a kind of a two-piece concept, looking at the age of your conversations, and so the first one was personally to look and see like where you have just gotten more sophisticated at saying things that you used to say when you were just really, really young, like, I don't wanna, right? And when we get older, we say, oh, that's not for me, but that's just an I don't wanna conversation. And so to look at the age of the things that are actually coming out of your mouth is one step. And then the thing that I thought was just extremely interesting was, when you, like, nobody, I think, can upset me like my family, right? Like, if, like, it's just my mom can just upset me, like nobody else. And my brother and sister, they know exactly how to get me if they want. And what this course pointed out is, when did your conversation begin with them? My conversation, quote unquote, with my mom began like the moment I was born. Like, before I could even talk, I was having in a conversation with my mom. And then when I first could speak, and so all that youthful stuff and all that upset and craziness of being a kid, that's still there, even though, my mom's older and I'm older and I'm a grown up. You and I met when we were already grown-ups. And so our conversation is a grown-up conversation. It began that way. It would be a lot harder for you to upset me, especially inadvertently, as easily as my mom could, right? Or other members of my family. And when I really started to notice that and think about it, it made a big difference in my relationship with my family. Because I could think, okay, I'm not going to let the 3-year-old Johnny respond to this now. I'm going to try to have the current John respond to this.
Yeah, I think that's very true, John, because you have to think about, for me with my children, they're now 28 and 31 years old. They're grown men, and I
Yeah.
still think of them as my boys. So that doesn't
Right.
really change. I know for my parents, before they passed away, I was still their little boy. That doesn't change. And if you're the big
Yeah.
brother or the little sister, that really doesn't change. And so
Yeah.
you bring that into your business relationship. And as you said, only family really knows how to get under the skin of another family member.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a hard group to lead, right? And you have
Yeah.
to choose a leader, right? It's almost like the Republicans trying to choose a Speaker of the House, right? A lot of people disagree, but if you're going to function as a business, right? If you're going to function as a business, you have to all put some things aside and choose a person that can lead you.
Yeah. So, Barry, you in your dealings with small businesses, what are some of the things that you see go wrong or go right when it comes to their communication? I'm thinking things like, if you can speak well and go out and get in front of groups, it can be really good leverage for your business. And if where are some of the places that you see things go right and go wrong for small businesses when it comes to communicating?
The most important thing is for you as a leader to be able to clearly articulate what your expectations are of the business unit, of the person, right? And a lot of folks think
Mm-hmm.
they are clearly communicating their expectations, but they're just not. It's just all in
No.
their mind, or what they're saying isn't really getting through to the person, or they don't hear it the way you gave it. So one of the things you really have to do is clearly articulate it and then ask for feedback and say, well, what did you hear I just said? And have them, have it come back to you to see if you're all on the same page. If you can give clear expectations about what your vision is, what the goal is, and you can let the other person or the person in your organization actually figure out how to execute it and give them some control over what they do, that will go a very long way.
Yeah. People really like to have some autonomy over how they do things. And what you're saying reminds me of something I realized a while ago, is that I was really into checking the box "I told you so." When things didn't go right, I told you so. You should have listened to me. I told you so. But every time I checked the box "I told you so" meant I didn't get the result I wanted. Checking the box "I told you so" seemed pretty awesome, but it wasn't getting me the results I wanted. And I started getting much more interested in checking the box "I landed it over there." How do I say this in a way that's going to land it over there so they're going to really get it? And that was one of the things that I started to do, would be to check in, like you said. And I noticed that I had been taught, because I was talking to the media a lot. So I had media training and everything. And they told me, ask them, would you mind playing that back to me so I can be sure you got it? That's a terrible thing to say, because now it's judging them on their ability to get it. So what I started to do instead is, when I would say something really important, I'd say, would you mind playing that back to me so I can be sure I communicated it correctly? And that lands very differently than "so I can be sure you got it." You know what I mean?
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think too many times when something goes sideways, people in the organization, especially the leader, wants to blame someone, right? It's somebody's fault. Because if they can
Yeah.
blame someone, it's not their fault. So people sit around
Right.
and they do that thing called blame storming, right? And
Yeah.
that really doesn't help anybody. A lot of times when someone that works for me isn't doing the job that I hope them to do, I don't go in there and say, why aren't you doing the job I asked you to do? I say, what is holding you back from achieving the results that we agreed to? And I think that's a
Yeah.
much better way to put it, because it basically puts them in the same place on their side. Hey, I'm willing to help you achieve these results if we can figure out what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really, really great. I think that's really, really great. And one of the things that is a core principle, I think, for good leadership, is to speak to your people like they're great, no matter how they're acting in the moment, no matter what their results are. So it doesn't mean you have to go in and say, "Hey,
Mhm.
this terrible job is a great job." No, no, no. You can say, "Look, this is a terrible job, and I think that you're great and you're super capable. What do you need from me? What's in the way of you doing this as well as I think you can? I hired you because I think you're brilliant, but these results clearly aren't up to par for you. What's the issue here, and how can I help?"
Yeah, one of the biggest things I find in small businesses, a lot of them don't know how to be a leader because they've
Mm,
never been trained. And I love
yeah.
the Harvard Business School case study, John. I'm sure you've read it, called Who's Got the Monkey? Right?
Yeah.
And
No, I'm going to
what
have to
happens
read it
there is
now.
that one of their employees comes the employee comes to you and they said, I have a problem. And instead of figuring out how to solve that problem with the employee, the leader actually takes on that problem and says, I'll come with a solution, I'll give it to you later. And that's really a problem, is that we do it ourselves. Leaders either don't have faith in their employees or the people, the team members that work for them, or they think they can do it better or faster. And that may be probably true, but you're never going to build a great company unless you can have those people keep their monkeys, keep their issues, and leverage them to get the work done. So I have everyone read that case study called Who's Got the Monkey, because the monkey jumps from the employee's back to the manager's back. And that's why the manager or the leader is working weekends and the employee is just off doing golf or whatever, because they know when they bring you a problem, you're going to do their work for them. So why should they figure it out?
Right. Yeah, no, that big mistake. And such an easy mistake to make, right? Like, it's so natural as somebody who's got a company and who's ultimately, responsible for it to want to do that. And it's such a difficult thing, I think, to do, because it does seem I mean, I know from personal experience, I could do it faster, right? Yeah. But if you teach this person how to do it well, then you'll never have to do it again. And it might take you a lot longer to get it done this time, these first few times, but then they can do it and you don't have to ever do it again. And, that's something I'm still working on, Barry.
And I always say, a lot of people say, I don't understand why so-and-so isn't doing their job. I end up doing it. And I always say, the reason they're not doing their job is because they know you're going to do it or you're going to redo it. So why should they work on it? You're doing their job and they're getting paid for it. If you train someone else to do it and you let them keep the monkey, even if they only do it as 80% as well, that frees you up to do something else. Even if they only do it 80% as well, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. And it's a good, it points to the ridiculousness to say, who's got the monkey. I really like that. 'Cause, like, I don't want your monkey. Like, that's your monkey. I'm paying you to deal with that monkey. Don't put it on my back. That's really funny. Good metaphor. So what are some of the other things that you see go on communication wise with small businesses? Things that people could either learn from positively or negatively?
Again, I think that people don't know how either to praise other people or tell them when they're not doing a good job. There are some
Mm,
leaders that are really good with praise and some that never praise people. But the other side, not telling them they're not doing a good job, a lot of people are lousy at that because they don't
yeah.
want the conflict. And you have to really be good at both. You're doing a great job, you're not doing a good job, or a lot of folks are really bad. They're quick to hire and they're slow to fire, and they just keep that person, going on and on and on. And that's really a big leadership mistake, because if you think about who is the worst performer in your company right now, everybody knows who the worst performer is. And you, by keeping that person on, not only are they taking your money and you're not getting anything in return, it's really bringing down the performance of everybody else in your organization, because they say, well, if Sally doesn't have to do a good job and she's being kept on, why should I do a good job? So
Yeah.
you've got to make sure, as a leader, you communicate to people you're doing well, you're not doing well, and the people aren't doing well, you've got to be able to get rid of them. That's a very important part, because you deserve better. But as a leader, if you're not able to communicate that, you're going to be stuck with a lot of people that aren't doing the best for your company.
So do you have any tips or advice to people, both for how to give, like, good feedback better, and also how to, and maybe this is the harder one, how to deal with those conversations that seem so difficult, but I think we make them harder than they need to be. But do you have any advice?
Yeah, I really think that if someone, first of all, you have to set out what the expectations are. What do they need to
Mm.
do over a certain period of time? That should be for everybody. And if they're not meeting those expectations, try to intervene or have the conversation as soon as possible and say, what is holding you back from achieving this goal that I said that we talked about you need to achieve in your business. And if you have several of those conversations, somewhere along the line you have to say, listen, if this doesn't improve, I can no longer have you part of this company. Now, depending on what state you're in, there's all sorts of rules about letting people go and things like that. If you're in Ohio, you can let people go, no problem. If you're in California, it's kind of a problem, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got to get some advice from HR. But again, if you don't do this, it's going to bring down your entire organization, and you've got to take the time. A lot of people ignore the poor performers in their business because they don't want to admit that they made a mistake hiring this person, or this person isn't working out.
Yeah.
And you've got to admit that this person isn't, and you've got to get rid of them. A lot of people are afraid to do that, John, because they figure, well, I may get somebody worse because the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. But I say to them, well, you might get somebody better.
Yeah, right. Yeah, especially if you are a little, slow to hire and maybe faster to fire, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, again, we're very quick to hire because we really just want to put some butt in that seat, someone who's going to
Mm.
take that responsibility. But again, as we all talk about, the people you have to hire are the ones where they have a culture fit, not just a skills fit. Will
Yeah.
they fit what you need inside your organization? And have you communicated to people, this is really what the culture is and this is what the expectations are?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we have a mutual friend, I think, in Dr. Sabrina Starling, who talks a lot about that, right?
Hmm. Trying to get her on my radio show all the time. I haven't been successful yet.
Oh, she would say yes in a minute.
I know. We've just had scheduling
So,
issues.
yeah, yeah, she's busy and you're busy. I get it. So, you know, what are some of the things, if you just cast your mind back over the whole time that you've been involved with small businesses and watching leaders and watching family businesses and other small businesses, what's one or two things that really stand out for you as maybe non-obvious lessons, like things that people are missing that are unexpected to them, but that you've finally managed to see just because of your view.
I think there are two things. One is people think that there isn't enough time in the day to get everything, all the important things done in their business. And they use time as an excuse not to get the important things done. And it's really not about time. It's really about focus. It's really about carving out a time in the day to pick the one or two things that are most important and don't get interrupted. But a lot of people don't want to focus. They're so used to being interrupted that if they don't get interrupted, they actually go look for the interruptions. We have to really learn to choose the two things that are really important in your business every single day. Pick those the day before, right? Which ones are important, urgent, and do those first without any kind of interruption. And I will tell you that if you don't manage your time well, if you're not able to focus, people in your organization will also have poor productivity habits as well. They won't be able to
Yeah.
focus either because remember, you're the leader. People are looking to you as the leader to set the example. And if you can't set the example, then no one's going to be able to. I would say that's the
Yeah.
first one. The second one is that people don't realize that you always have to be marketing and selling in your business. I don't care how good your product or service is. You've got to be out there because I believe that we actually can't sell anything to anybody. We have to be there when people are ready to buy. That means you always have to be marketing. You always have to remind people, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I'm an expert in this area. So, for example, you're a perfect example of that, because every week or on social media, I see you talking about doing TED Talks and speaker training. And when I had a client that was interested in doing a TED Talk, I didn't have to remember John Bates. He was right there this week telling me what he does.
Yeah,
So I was
that's
able to
great.
refer someone to you. And that's really what marketing is all about.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, Barry, because I think that like many small business owners, my business just the only thing that really seems to work is referrals. And I think that you're right. The way to get those referrals to happen is to just be present and don't make people remember you. Be there so that they see you ongoingly. And then when they're ready to buy or when they're ready to refer, there you are again. And I think that's a really good way to think about it. I think that that makes it a lot clearer for me why that works and why that's a good thing to do.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever let's say that I was like last year I was in the market for an electric bike.
Uh huh.
And I realized there were electric bike ads all around me, but I never noticed them until I was in the market for one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
again,
interesting.
we have to be there when people are ready to buy, and you constantly have to tell people that you're an expert in how you can help them.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So, Barry, how can people find you? What are the best places for them to find you?
So you go to my website, which is just my name, barrymoltz.com, Moltz, or on social media, it's just Barry Moltz.
Great. And what are you mostly active? I mean, I guess you're on everything, but is there any place where you're more active than others, like maybe more active on LinkedIn or
I would say all the platforms except TikTok. Just haven't
yeah.
gotten into that yet, John.
Yeah, yeah. I'm considering a foray, Barry, but I'm not there yet either.
It's
So,
good. It's good.
so anything that I should have asked you, or anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up and I get you out of here like I promised?
I think that leading other people is hard. But if you don't get good at it, you're never going to be able to build a business, because businesses are not about doing everything yourself. Carl Roth always says, if you do everything yourself in a business, then you've bought yourself a job. You really don't have a company. Only by leading other people to do other tasks, to get things done that are independent from you, will you truly build a business that has any value. And if you have any dream of selling that business one day, if the business is all about you, it's not going to have much value.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. I think a good note to wrap up on, and it certainly is. It's a clarion call to me. Like right now, I have a job. I work for myself. Um, and I think that coming up here, it would be really nice to consider, how I would want to turn that into a business. And I think that for a while, I thought I wanted to do that, and I really didn't. And I was beating myself up for not doing it and whatever. And then I finally just admitted I don't want to do that. But I think coming up here in the next little while, it is something that's starting to call me forth, like for real, not just because I think I should do it or I ought to do it, but because I would actually like to do it. And I do think that you know, it's amazing to me that just what a group of people can accomplish and how much bigger a difference in the world a group of people that's organized and pulling in the same direction can make versus just one person. So that's pretty inspiring.
It can be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Barry, thank you very, very much for joining me. And I wish you the best. And people can find you at Barry Moltz, BarryMoltz.com. And you're Barry Moltz on social media all over except TikTok. And so I really, really appreciate you joining me. And it's been a pleasure to know you all these years. And I look forward to just keeping on watching you do your thing out there. And thanks for the difference that you make.
Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Thanks. We'll see you later. And thank you all for joining us on speaklikealeader.show. We'll see you next time and have a great rest of your week. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.